a simple sweatshirt, an upscale showroom, and one stunning revelation. What unfolds when a dealership supervisor underestimates the man who quietly possesses it all? Darrell drove into the lot of Prestige Motors, the premier dealership he'd just purchased in bright Scottsdale, Arizona. The desert warmth danced above the elegant luxury cars positioned out front, their polished surfaces nearly radiating in the midday sun. He positioned his humble SUV in an unmarked space toward the rear and climbed out, pausing to examine the dealership's exterior. He hadn't chosen clothes to impress, quite the contrary. A plain gray sweatshirt, somewhat faded denim, and tennis shoes formed his outfit for the day. His choice to dress down was intentional. He hoped to witness the dealership's authentic nature, to understand how it functioned when nobody realized the new proprietor was observing. Walking toward the entrance, he spotted a small cluster of staff members inside, conversing by the reception area. The soft sound of amusement and relaxed discussion drifted through the glass entrance. Darrell pushed open the door and entered. The climate-controlled showroom contrasted sharply with the outdoor heat, filled with the subtle aroma of leather and fresh polish. Rows of immaculate vehicles sparkled beneath the brilliant overhead lighting. The conversation quieted as he stepped inside. Darrell noticed the quick looks shared among the staff, their gaze moving to his sweatshirt and sneakers. He sensed the subtle change in atmosphere, the type that communicated more than spoken words. However, he wasn't there to make judgments. He was there to watch. Then, from the far side of the showroom, she emerged. Susan. Susan was a woman in her middle years with defined features and an equally penetrating stare. Her fitted jacket and glossy shoes conveyed authority, while the notepad secured beneath her arm suggested professionalism. She advanced with intention, her heels tapping against the polished surface. Her manner appeared courteous initially, but there was a stiffness in her expression that didn't escape Darrell's attention. "Pardon me," Susan started, her voice distant and measured. "May I assist you with something?" Darrell grinned, his attitude relaxed. "Just here to browse around," he replied casually, indicating the vehicles. Susan's eyes sharpened, examining him completely. Her courteous mask shifted slightly, revealing something less inviting. "Are you looking to purchase a vehicle?" she inquired, her tone carrying a hint of skepticism. Darrell confirmed with a nod, maintaining his smile. "Something along those lines." Susan's mouth tightened. "Well, we serve a very particular customer base here. Most of our selection requires advance approval. Perhaps I could suggest—" Before she could complete her thought, another worker interrupted. "Hey, Susan, the courier has arrived." Her focus shifted momentarily, but her attention returned to Darrell, as if ensuring he wouldn't venture too far. Darrell lifted an eyebrow, but maintained his casual tone. "You're presuming I don't qualify." The question appeared to surprise her, though only momentarily. She regained her composure swiftly, her stance becoming rigid. "I'm simply attempting to preserve your time," she responded with a strained smile. "These vehicles begin at 6 figures. Perhaps I can point you toward—" Darrell's demeanor remained unchanged, but he internally registered her word choice. His composed bearing was unshaken, yet the subtle bite of her presumptions was unmistakable. The moment stretched, tension filling the space, as Susan regarded him expectantly. Darrell surveyed the showroom, appearing to appreciate one of the nearby vehicles. It was an elegant silver sports car with a bold design. His hand touched the door handle, and he looked back at Susan. "Beautiful vehicle," he commented simply. Her expression tightened slightly, but she managed another smile. "It certainly is. When you're prepared to make a genuine inquiry, we can arrange an appointment. For the moment, I must request that you avoid handling the vehicles." Darrell remained there briefly, weighing her words. Before moving away from the car, he nodded once, placing his hands in his pockets, and gestured for her to proceed. "Very well. Let's discuss it. What would you suggest for someone in my position?" Susan appeared startled by his direct question. But before she could answer, Darrell continued. "If you believe you understand what I require, I'm listening." Her polite mask cracked enough to show the impatience beneath. "Perhaps something more reasonably priced. I can provide directions to a dealer that focuses on previously owned vehicles." Darrell smiled slightly, though it didn't touch his eyes. He'd observed enough. "That's quite a presumption," he said quietly. The comment lingered in the air, and momentarily, Susan wavered. Then, recovering her composure, she squared her shoulders. "I'll return with a selection of alternatives," she declared, walking away quickly. Darrell observed her departure, his expression unreadable. He turned back to the silver sports car, his image reflected in the glossy surface. This would prove to be a fascinating day. Darrell positioned himself in the showroom's center, hands tucked in his pockets, his attention wandering over the vehicle lineup. He wasn't inclined to rush to judgment, but Susan's condescending behavior was difficult to overlook. Around him, the personnel had continued their discussions, though he noticed the periodic glance his way. It was the type of examination he'd grown familiar with through the years, the quiet criticism, the unspoken assessments. Susan reappeared shortly after, her notepad gripped firmly as if it provided protection. Her quick pace and forced expression revealed her irritation. "All right," she announced, stopping several feet from him. "I've gathered some alternatives that might better suit your circumstances." Darrell angled his head slightly. "My circumstances?" "Exactly," Susan confirmed, her tone sharp. She offered him a printout of pre-owned vehicles, each with comprehensive descriptions, and prices well beneath the dealership's standard inventory. "These are more attainable options, dependable, economical, and quite practical." Darrell accepted the list silently, his eyes reviewing the page. A used family car, an aging SUV, a small hybrid. His mouth curved in slight amusement, but he quickly concealed it, folding the document and placing it in his pocket. "I value the thought," he said, his tone steady. Susan appeared momentarily disarmed by his reaction, but she quickly recovered, her hands positioned on her waist. "Listen," she said, her voice lowering as if sharing confidential information. "I'm simply attempting to be realistic with you. Prestige Motors isn't suitable for everyone. I don't wish to waste your time." Darrell met her stare, his expression calm yet unwavering. "And what precisely leads you to believe I'm not your ideal customer?" Susan paused, but only momentarily. "I've been in this business for years," she said. "I can recognize when someone's in over their head." "In over their head," Darrell echoed, his voice neutral, almost contemplative. "Fascinating." There was a hint of doubt in Susan's eyes, but she continued. "I'm simply being direct. It's preferable to be straightforward rather than having someone depart disappointed." Darrell released a quiet laugh, shaking his head gently. "Direct, I see. I appreciate directness. How about this? Could you arrange for me to speak with the owner? Do you think that's possible?" Susan's eyebrows rose sharply. For the first time, she appeared genuinely surprised. "The owner?" "That's correct," Darrell said, his tone casual, almost conversational. "I'd like to have a discussion with them." Susan's expression twitched in a weak attempt at a smile. "Well, that's not feasible today. The owner doesn't simply appear for informal visits. They're quite busy." "I'm certain they are," Darrell said, nodding slightly. "But perhaps you could contact them. Inform them I'm here. I believe they'd be interested in meeting me." Susan's smile grew strained. She was losing patience, and it was evident. "Look, sir, I'm attempting to remain as courteous as possible, but this is becoming absurd. I have other clients to serve. If you're genuine about purchasing a vehicle, we can schedule an appointment with one of our sales representatives. Otherwise what?" Darrell inquired, his tone remaining calm, though there was an unmistakable sharpness in his voice now. Susan's eyes narrowed, her frustration rising to the surface. "Otherwise, I'll need to request that you leave." The statement hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Darrell remained motionless, his gaze fixed on hers. For a moment, the entire showroom seemed to pause. Then, gradually, Darrell reached into his pocket and retrieved his phone. "Very well," he said, browsing through his contacts. "I'll place the call myself." Susan blinked, her brow creasing. "What are you doing?" "Simply contacting the owner," Darrell responded, raising the phone to his ear. "This shouldn't take long." Susan's assurance wavered, her annoyance transforming into bewilderment. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound emerged. Around them, several employees had paused their activities, their attention drawn to the developing situation. Darrell raised a finger, as if to indicate one moment, then turned slightly away, speaking into the phone. "Yes, it's me. I'm at the dealership. Everything's fine. Just a minor misunderstanding. Could you inform them I'm here?" He concluded the call and returned the phone to his pocket, facing Susan again. "They'll arrive shortly," he said simply. Susan stared at him, her mouth slightly agape. "Who? Who did you just contact?" Darrell didn't respond immediately. Instead, he glanced around the showroom, his gaze lingering on the staff who were now watching closely. "I suppose we'll discover that," he said, his tone almost playful. The tension in the room was tangible, its weight affecting everyone present. Susan shifted uncomfortably, her composure beginning to fracture. Minutes elapsed, but the room felt suspended in time. Susan occupied herself with her notepad, though her movements were stiff and calculated, betraying her unease. Darrell, conversely, stood casually beside one of the luxury SUVs, his calm demeanor only intensifying the tension. The few employees scattered throughout the showroom whispered among themselves, stealing glances at the unfolding drama. It was obvious everyone was awaiting something, or someone. The sound of the main entrance opening shattered the silence. A well-dressed man in a dark suit entered, his polished shoes clicking softly on the tile floor. His expression was serious, yet welcoming, and his eyes immediately located Darrell. "Mr. Carter," the man said with a broad smile, extending his hand as he approached. "Wonderful to see you." Darrell returned the handshake with a firm grip, a small smile appearing at the corners of his mouth. "Thank you for coming, Alex. I appreciate it." The room collectively tensed. Susan's notepad nearly slipped from her grasp as her eyes moved between Darrell and Alex, the dealership's regional director. Her confusion rapidly transformed into visible alarm. "Wait, Mr. Carter?" she repeated, her voice uncertain. Alex turned to her, his friendly demeanor shifting to something more professional, almost brusque. "Susan, I see you've already encountered Mr. Carter." Susan blinked, her mouth opening and closing as if searching for appropriate words. I wasn't aware." "You weren't aware he's the new owner of this dealership," Alex completed for her, his tone sharp. He glanced at Darrell with an apologetic expression. "I trust this wasn't your preferred welcome." Darrell raised a hand, stopping him. "It's fine, Alex. I think Susan and I simply started off poorly." His voice was calm, but there was a weight to his words that made the entire room focus on them. Susan's face became pale, and she stepped back, her notepad clutched to her chest like a lifeline. I'm terribly sorry," she stammered, her voice barely audible. "I didn't realize." "You didn't realize what?" Darrell asked, his tone still gentle but firm. "That I could own an establishment like this? That someone like me might actually have a place here?" Her eyes widened, and momentarily she seemed completely lost. "I didn't intend." Darrell raised a hand, interrupting her. "It's fine, Susan, truly." He stepped closer, his voice dropping just enough to make everyone lean forward. "But let me ask you something. If I hadn't been the owner, would you have treated me differently? Would you have shown me the same respect you'd give someone who entered here wearing formal business attire?" Susan opened her mouth, but no words emerged. The silence was overwhelming. Darrell nodded, as if her silence provided sufficient answer. He turned to Alex, his voice carrying new authority. "Let's assemble everyone in the conference room. I think it's time we discussed how operations are conducted here." The employees gathered in the sleek conference room, the atmosphere thick with tension. The room, designed to impress with its glass walls and contemporary furnishings, felt suffocating today. Susan sat toward the rear, her usual confident manner replaced by nervous stillness. Darrell stood at the table's head, calm and collected, his presence commanding everyone's attention. Alex remained by the door, arms folded, his expression unreadable as he observed the staff taking their seats. The quiet murmur of whispers faded as Darrell cleared his throat, his gaze sweeping across the group. "Thank you all for joining me on brief notice," Darrell began, his tone measured but firm. "For those unfamiliar, my name is Darrell Carter, and as of last month, I'm the new owner of Prestige Motors." There were sounds of surprise from several employees, their reactions ranging from curiosity to embarrassment. Susan sank deeper into her chair, avoiding eye contact. "I came here today dressed informally for a purpose," Darrell continued, his voice steady. "I wanted to observe how this dealership functions when no one recognizes who I am. I wanted to experience what a prospective customer might feel entering through those doors." He allowed the words to settle momentarily before continuing. "What I experienced today was discouraging. I was evaluated not for what I could contribute, but for my appearance. And I'm not here to target anyone specifically, but we need to discuss what this reveals about this dealership's culture." Susan shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her face flushed. Darrell's eyes briefly found hers before returning to the group as a whole. "This isn't solely about me," he said. "It's about every person who enters those doors. Every customer who doesn't conform to someone's preconceived idea of what a luxury car purchaser looks like." One of the younger sales associates raised his hand tentatively. Darrell acknowledged him with a nod. "Go ahead." "Mr. Carter," the man began nervously, "I think most of us attempt to treat customers fairly. But sometimes it's challenging not to make assumptions." Darrell nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I understand that," he said. "We all have biases, whether we acknowledge them or not. But here's the reality. It's insufficient to simply attempt fairness. We must actively confront those biases. We must establish an environment where everyone feels respected, regardless of their appearance, background, or anything else." He paused, allowing the words to resonate before continuing. "This dealership has established a reputation for excellence. But excellence isn't merely about the vehicles we sell. It's about the experience we provide. And from this point forward, that experience will be founded on respect, inclusivity, and fairness." There was a wave of agreement around the room, though several faces remained cautious. Darrell's gaze settled on Susan, who sat frozen, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Susan," he said gently but firmly, "I want to offer you the opportunity to speak. Is there anything you'd like to say?" All attention turned to her. She hesitated, her voice barely perceptible when she finally spoke. "I made an error," she admitted, her cheeks reddening. "I misjudged you, and for that, I'm genuinely sorry." Darrell nodded, his expression unreadable. "Thank you for acknowledging that," he said. "I hope this experience will serve as a reminder for all of us, not just you, because change begins with accountability." He turned back to the group. "Going forward, we'll be implementing new training programs to ensure this dealership represents the values I believe in. Every customer deserves to be treated with dignity, no exceptions. If anyone has concerns about that, now is the time to voice them." The room was silent. The silence in the conference room was deafening, interrupted only by the faint hum of the air conditioning. No one spoke, but the impact of Darrell's words remained, affecting everyone present. Darrell allowed the quiet to extend just long enough to emphasize his point before speaking again, his voice calm but resolute. "Excellent," he said. "I'm pleased to see we're all in agreement. Change isn't always comfortable, but it's essential. And this dealership is going to set an example." He stepped away from the table, his hands resting lightly on its edge as he leaned forward slightly. "Let me be clear. I didn't come here today to embarrass anyone. I came to understand what kind of culture I've inherited and how we can improve it." His eyes moved to Susan, who still sat quietly in the back. "Susan," he said, his tone softening just enough to clarify he wasn't attacking her. "You're an experienced manager, and I'm sure you've worked diligently to reach your position. But today was a wake-up call for you, and for all of us." Susan looked up, meeting his gaze for the first time. "I understand," she said, her voice shaky but sincere. "I was wrong, and I'll do whatever is necessary to make this right." Darrell nodded. "I believe in second opportunities," he said simply. "But accountability comes first. I'll be meeting with you privately to discuss next steps. For now, let's focus on moving forward." He straightened, turning his attention back to the rest of the team. "We're not merely selling cars here. We're building trust, creating relationships, and representing a standard of excellence. If you're committed to that, I'm here to support you every step of the way." There was a murmur of agreement this time, louder and more genuine. The staff seemed to relax, the initial tension giving way to a sense of renewed purpose. Even Alex, who had been standing quietly by the door, nodded in approval. Darrell smiled faintly, the kind of smile that suggested both relief and determination. "All right then, let's return to work. And remember, how we treat people matters more than anything we sell." As the employees began to exit the room, Darrell noticed Susan lingering by the door. She approached him hesitantly, her hands twisting nervously. "Mr. Carter," she began, her voice low, I want to thank you for giving me a chance to improve. I won't disappoint you." Darrell looked at her for a moment before responding, his voice steady. "I hope you're sincere about that, Susan. Actions speak louder than words. But I believe people can change if they're willing to make the effort." She nodded, her eyes earnest. "I am." Darrell watched her leave before turning to Alex. "Let's schedule a meeting with the staff next week," he said. "I want to ensure everyone understands what's expected moving forward." Alex grinned, his respect for Darrell evident. "You've got it, boss." As Darrell stepped back into the showroom, he glanced around at the cars, the gleaming surfaces reflecting the afternoon light. He thought about how much work lay ahead, but for the first time that day, he felt hopeful. This wasn't just about operating a dealership. It was about creating something greater, a space where people were judged by their character, not their appearance. And Darrell was prepared to lead the way.